Okay, so I would like to begin by thanking Sudraya Vigyana Kendra for organizing this talk, and to Vinay Kumarji for being in touch to get me to talk. I have broadened the title of the talk a little by calling it Trump's Tariff War, Global Consequences and Alternatives. So it's not just consequences, but global consequences. Huh? That's the first point. Now, as an introduction, you see, President Trump, after coming to power on January 20th, he started talking about tariffs, and he calls them beautiful. And he says that that'll make America great. So he's levying these tariffs, and therefore on April 2nd, he levied the widespread tariff of 10% on all countries, and then calculated high tariff on other countries, and he calls it the Liberation Day. He says people in the future will remember this day because it'll change the destiny of the USA. When he was proposing the tariff, there was a ring of justification because he called them reciprocal tariff. So reciprocal means that however much tariff somebody is levying on American goods, the same would be applied to the goods from other countries. So there is some kind of justification. But these high tariffs that he's levied is not reciprocity, but it is actually protectionism. So the idea was reciprocity, but what is being done is to protect the American economy by levying very high tariffs on its trading partners, and especially the big trading partners, the 20 countries with which the trade is very high. But what happened was that after announcing it on 9th of April, the high tariffs were to come into play. But before they could come into play, he has declared a 90-day pause. Now the question is, why is it that he's giving 90-day pause? And it appears that he's using the time to bargain. So he's saying 90 countries he's bargaining with. So this pause, it has been also given a justification that he wants to come to agreement. But what is the situation? The situation is that you see the stock markets were going up and down. The stock markets were declining, and then the bond market was also in turmoil. The yields on the bonds, they rose because the bond prices declined. What it suggests is that the confidence of the rest of the world in the US, that had declined, and I think that is the reason why he decided to give 90-day pause. So this delay in implementation also suggests that the President Trump had not worked out how he would proceed to make America great again. His goal is to make America great again, but the path does not seem to be the right path, or it doesn't will not make America great. He was wanting to actually checkmate China. China is a rising power, and he wants to prevent China's rise. So there is a fight for global dominance. That's what it appears. And the financial markets therefore started signaling recession. Because if the two big economies compete with each other, then there'll be a lot of devastation that will take place. And the financial market are signaling that there could be a recession. Also, you see, President Trump realized that the global integration of the supply chains means that if you levy high tariff, then your own prices will rise. Your supply chains will get disrupted. That's why he's talking about giving concession to the auto sector. He's allowed the electronic goods to be imported without the high duties that is being put, etc. And simultaneously, there have been protests going on in the USA and globally against the policies that President Trump is bringing about. So there are also political reasons, and also the courts are intervening. The courts are saying that some of the things that he's doing are not legal. Some of the states in the USA are saying you cannot levy tariff. The tariff levying power is with the Congress, not with the president. And now elections are coming in 1.5 years for Senate and for Congress. And if the price rise is there and unemployment is there, then he lose the elections. So all this put together is putting pressure on him to actually pause. Mr. Virya?
Yes, sir.
So America is trying to face the crisis of capitalism by actually levying these tariffs. The crisis of capitalism cannot be sorted out by levying these tariffs. That is the thing that I'll try and explain. What has happened is that you see the soft face of capitalism that was there till the time Soviet Union was there has been replaced by a hard face of capitalism. This hard face of capitalism is visible when America is now saying capital movement you have to give concession, whereas earlier America used to say and the West used to say that we are giving aid to the developing world. So this aid has been replaced by giving concessions. And the reason this is happening is that capital has become highly mobile, whereas labor is non-mobile. So capital is able to extract concessions from everywhere, and this has led to a rightward drift all over the world. Whether you see Europe or Asia or Latin America, you see the various right-wing parties rising in the last 30 years, you know, and therefore the marginalized sections of the world are suffering. And this globalization made them suffer, and now again they are suffering because of these tariffs that are being levied. So labor is losing the gains that it made after the Second World War, and therefore there's a marginalization of the labor, marginalization of the weak people, before Trump, and now it'll become worse after the Trump's whole world is getting affected by it. Mr. The USA was in the forefront of making the world free market, but now it is using tariff to end the free market idea. So Trump is, inside the USA, he's a free marketeer. He wants to give more concession to business. He wants to lower their corporation tax and the income tax. Okay, but outside, he's not conceding that. So for the outside world, he's giving up the idea of the free market, and he's trying to extract concession by threatening tariffs on the outside rest of the world. So in the USA, it's free market, pro-business policy, but outside it is an anti-free market philosophy. So what is the rationale for the very high tariffs that is being levied? 10% across the board tariff, and then much higher tariff on various trading partners. That is not reciprocity. Because reciprocity means that if I levy some tariff on your goods, you levy the same tariff on my goods, right? That is reciprocity. But here that is not the case. How it is being calculated is that if I have a trade surplus with America, then my trade surplus divided by my total export, that is the percentage that is calculated, and half of that is levied on my export of goods to the USA. So that is not the way to close the deficit. Yes, there is a deficit in the US account with major trading companies. America has a large trade deficit with the rest of the world. Okay, but to close it, you cannot levy these high deficits, high tariffs, and expect that your deficit will be closed. The reason for that is somewhere else. Because what you will be doing by levying the high tariff is you actually hurt your own economy. Your inflation will go up because when you import something worth $100 and you levy a tariff of 20%, then it becomes $120. If you raise the tariff to 40%, then the price becomes $140. Of course, some reduction may take place because some industry may absorb the margin, but nonetheless, the price will rise. So you cannot close the deficit of the USA by hurting your own economy. It's like cutting your nose to cure the cold. That is not the solution for the cold. So you have to work out alternative sources to be able to supply the US economy. Where will that come? And how quickly can that come? Given all this, how does it actually close the deficit? So to give example, India levies 17% average tariff, and the USA levies average tariff of 3%. So the gap is 14%. So how come it is being levied 26 or 27%? Similarly, on China, the tariff being proposed earlier was 34%, but of course now it is 145%. The gap between tariff from China and the USA is not 34% or 145%. Similarly, Vietnam, you are levying 46% tariff, but the gap between Vietnam and the USA is not 46%. So that's why I call them protectionist tariff and not reciprocal tariff. The question is, why are businesses investing abroad and less in the USA? That is something we have to understand. Now, with the advent of WTO, the world globalized very rapidly and production has become globally integrated. You don't produce any one thing. Like if you look at your shirt, the viscose may be coming from one country, the thread may be coming from another country, the buttons may be coming from another country. Similarly, for the shoes, there's a global integration of the chain. Similarly, for automobile sector, there's a global integration. So therefore, the share of export and import of GDP for all countries has risen. So, like for instance, in India, in 1991, we had about 7% share of GDP for export and for import, but now it is 22%. Similarly, in America, it used to be 6%, it is now 14%. In China, it was 9%, it has become very high. For China, to about 20%. So companies are trying to maximize their profit, okay, by relocating their production in low-wage countries, and that's why supply chains have become long, and various countries are investing in various places through the MNCs. So this globalization of production has meant that there is a new division of labor. This new division of labor is between high technology, intermediate technology, and low technology production. So the low wages in the developing countries, they became source of cheap supplies. And now what has happened is that there's a competition amongst the developing countries. So like for instance, textile is supplied by Vietnam, by China, by India, by Bangladesh, by Honolulu, etc. So we are all competing to keep the prices low. So the advanced countries which are producing the high technology goods and services, they are benefiting in totality because they are getting the wage goods cheap from the developing world. And what they are producing are more services, okay? And those services have got the free market in the developing world. Because in the WTO, in the negotiation, while we were given advantage of having tariffs, they were getting advantage of getting the trips and the trims and the trade in services and the dispute mechanism. So in the WTO, there was a give and take. Some benefit was given to developing countries and concessions were given to the advanced countries. So this new division of labor that has taken place is what is creating the problem, because intermediate technology production has come to the developing world. And that is what President Trump is calling the good jobs going to India, China, and Mexico.
Yes.
So this division of labor has meant that the developing world is supplying the wage goods very cheap with low wages and low profit margin, whereas the advanced countries are supplying the high technology items, services at high profit margin for their businesses. So the terms of trade have shifted against the developing world, and this has enabled inflation to be low in the advanced countries, and they are living beyond their means because we are supplying them goods very cheap. So this has improved their living standard. So unlike President Trump saying that the other countries are taking advantage, it is the USA which is taking advantage of all the countries, because the developing world is supplying them very cheap. And because you see the wages, in the USA, minimum wage is $7.25 per hour. Many states have $50 per hour, and in the automobile sector, they may have $25-30 per hour. But in China and Guangdong, it is $1.2 per hour. So if you manufacture with the same given technology, then it will be much cheaper in China or in India than in the USA. And that's why the production has shifted to the developing world, to China, India, Mexico, etc. And the high technology item production is not labor intensive. It is highly automated. So that does not generate many jobs. So this is the catch for the USA, that where it is focusing, there the employment generation will be much less. So those people who are working in the automobile sector, in steel sector, they have to work for low wages in the services sector. And that is what the workers are complaining, the blue collar workers, that they are in the rust belt, they're not getting good jobs, right? So that's what the President Trump was tapping into, the dissatisfaction of these people. So the levy of high tariffs will not solve the problem unless the USA puts permanent high tariff. Because given the wage differential between the USA and China and India, okay, unless they're very high tariff, American production will not be competitive and the production will continue to take place. So this division of labor that has taken place cannot be solved by levying high tariff. It has to be permanent high tariff, and that permanent high tariff will mean high inflation and other possibility of recession. So the point is, how will India be affected? We must understand that. Under WTO, India was given certain concessions because we were a developing country, so we could have higher tariff. Now Trump is trying to remove that higher tariff. And for India, especially on agriculture, protection for our agriculture is very necessary, because in the USA, average farmer gets 26 lakhs of rupees of subsidy every year. The average Indian farmer will be earning only 1 to 2 lakhs of rupees per year. So there can be no competition. Now, when the tariffs become reciprocal, that means we levy the same tariff as they are levying, then our industry will have to sell at a cheaper price. For that, they will reduce the wages of the workers. They will compress the wages of the workers. So if Trump is successful, then our farmers will suffer and our workers will suffer. And the impact of this tariff war on our country will be that we will be coerced into accepting. And that would be, the poverty will increase because of the workers' wages are affected. And if the incomes of the farmers are affected, then there'll be a problem. Then if the world economy slips into recession, then our exports will also suffer. And to become more competitive, our industry will again squeeze wages. So this is a very difficult situation because Indian workers and farmers suffer due to globalization, and now due to this new tariff war, which is leading to a deglobalization, again they will suffer. Mr. Viri.
మిత్రులు, ఇప్పుడు అమెరికా ఎలా స్పందిస్తోంది, దానికి మిగతా దేశాలు ఎలా ప్రతిస్పందిస్తున్నాయి అనేది ఒక ప్రాథమిక అవగాహనకి వచ్చాం. ఇప్పుడు భారతదేశం ఎట్లా స్పందిస్తుంది అనేది కీలకం. ప్రపంచ వాణిజ్య సంస్థలో ఉన్నటువంటి విధి విధానాలు, వాటి నేపథ్యంలో భారతదేశం అప్పటికి, అంటే ప్రపంచ వాణిజ్య సంస్థ ఒప్పందం కుదిరే నాటికి 1994 నాటికి వర్ధమాన దేశంగా, అభివృద్ధి చెందుతున్నటువంటి దేశంగా భారతదేశం ఉంది కాబట్టి మనకు కొన్ని రాయితీలు ఇచ్చారు. కొన్ని అంశాలకు సంబంధించినటువంటి రాయితీలు ఇచ్చారు. వ్యవసాయ ఉత్పత్తుల విషయంలో కానీ, వ్యవసాయానికి ఆహార సబ్సిడీ విషయంలో కానీ, వ్యవసాయ సబ్సిడీల విషయంలో కానీ, కొన్ని ఉత్పాదక రాయితీల విషయంలో కానీ కొన్ని మనకి వెసులుబాట్లు ఉన్నాయి. ఇప్పుడు ట్రంప్ ఏమంటున్నాడు, ప్రపంచ వాణిజ్య సంస్థ భారతదేశానికి ఇచ్చినటువంటి రాయితీలు, మినహాయింపులు, వెసులుబాట్లు అన్నింటినీ రద్దు చేయాలి అని చెప్తుంది. అవి రద్దు చేయడం అంటే దాని పర్యవసానం ఏంటి? సేవా రంగాల్లో కానీ, వస్తోత్పత్తి రంగంలో కానీ, వ్యవసాయ రంగంలో కానీ ఇప్పటి వరకు భారతదేశం రకరకాల రూపాల్లో ఇచ్చినటువంటి సబ్సిడీలు మొత్తం రద్దు అవ్వాలి. ఆ సబ్సిడీలు రద్దు అయితే మిగతా పర్యవసానాలు ఎట్లా ఉంటే మనందరికీ అనుభవం. పెరుగుతున్నటువంటి ఎరువుల ధరలతో ఎంత వ్యవసాయం చేస్తాడు రైతు, ఎంత అమ్ముకోగలుగుతాడు? ఇంత చేసి తయారైనటువంటి వస్తువు మళ్ళీ అమెరికాను ఇంకో చోటలో పంపిద్దాము అని చెప్పి పంపించే వెసులుబాటు ఉంటుందా? ఉండదు. ఆ రకంగా ఉపాధి సమస్య తలెత్తుతుంది, కొనుగోలు శక్తి సమస్య తలెత్తుతుంది, ఎగుమతిలో వాణిజ్యం దెబ్బతింటుంది. ఎందుకంటే ఇతర దేశాలు వెళ్ళడానికి అవకాశం లేదు కాబట్టి మన దగ్గర కూడా ధరలు పెరుగుతాయి కదా. ఆ ధరలు పెరిగిన తర్వాత ఎక్కువ ధరలతోటి మళ్ళీ కొనుక్కోవడానికి ఇతర దేశాలు సిద్ధపడరు కాబట్టి మన అంతర్జాతీయ వాణిజ్యం, ఎగుమతులు దిగుమతులు మళ్ళా సమస్యాత్మకంగా మారుతాయి. ఇవన్నీ చూసుకున్నప్పుడు ఒక రకమైనటువంటి విషవలయంలోకి మనం ఎంటర్ అయ్యే అవకాశం, ప్రవేశించే అవకాశం కనిపిస్తూ ఉంది. ఇది మొత్తం ప్రపంచ ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థ ఒక రకమైనటువంటి విషవలయంలోకి చేరితే, విషవలయంలో ప్రవేశిస్తే భారతదేశం లాంటి వర్ధమాన దేశాల్లో ఉన్నటువంటి ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థ అంతకంటే రెట్టింపు భారం, విషవలయం అదే, కానీ భారం మాత్రం రెట్టింపు, ప్రజలపైన ఉండే భారం రెట్టింపు అయ్యే ప్రమాదం కనిపిస్తుంది.
So India, because of its weakness, had already started lowering its tariffs in the budget. Even before Trump asked for lowering of the tariff, we had already started lowering. And then India is saying that because the tariff levied on India may be less than on Vietnam and China, we may benefit. But if the world economy goes into recession, this benefit would be very small. Overall, the recession will actually affect the Indian economy even more. And India is saying they're doing trade negotiations with the USA. But we have been having trade negotiation with EU for the last 23 years, and we have not been successful to conclude because they want concessions which we cannot give. Similarly, with UK, we are having negotiations since 2021, and they are not able to conclude that also. So completing negotiation with the USA on USA's term will be very difficult for our workers and farmers. And if we negotiate for their interest, then negotiations will not go through. So these are the challenges for India in terms of what the US is doing at the moment. So what we see is that before even President Trump became president, he won the election. He created a lot of uncertainty globally by talking about tariffs and about bringing jobs back, etc. And that has affected the financial markets also. And whenever the financial markets are affected, then investors go for certainty, and the certainty was provided by dollar and by gold. So that's why the dollar was rising compared to other currencies, and the other currencies like rupee and the pound, etc., they were all declining. But what has happened lately is because the confidence in the US economy has also gone down, therefore dollar is also declining now compared to other currencies. So now dollar is no more a certainty, therefore gold is the only certainty. So gold prices have been going up. Now this uncertainty has meant that there's a decline in the investment, in the stock markets, in the currencies, in the gold prices going up, etc. So therefore, all this is upsetting the financial markets, and therefore investment will be going down. And this loss of confidence in the US economy will play a big role in moving the world towards a deeper recession. So what is happening is that under WTO, there was multilateral negotiation that is being replaced by bilateral negotiation. So this is what is deglobalization. From globalization, we are moving towards deglobalization. And part of the deglobalization is also de-dollarization. This de-dollarization started with the Ukraine war when the USA froze the assets of the Soviet of Russia. So then central banks have been moving towards buying more gold and other currencies and away from the dollar. So President Trump even threatened BRICS that he would levy 100% tariff if the BRICS countries go for de-dollarization. So in other words, now we are moving towards deglobalization and de-dollarization. And this will affect the living standard in the advanced countries because they were taking advantage of this multilateralism and the shift in the terms of trade in their favor. And the USA was benefiting from dollarization because it could have a large budget deficit, it could have a large trade deficit, and get the resources from the rest of the world. When a person outside the USA holds dollars, it is giving an interest-free loan to the US economy. So therefore, it could live beyond its means. So what is happening is that globalization is being replaced by deglobalization as a result of this tariff war that is taking place. Now, if there's dumping, then this deglobalization will become even stronger because every nation has a tariff. Okay, so let us see how it moves. Whether deglobalization will be only vis-a-vis the USA or it will be the whole world which will deglobalize by putting high tariffs on each other. So, in other words, the situation can become much worse if we levy tariff on each other country also. If we only levy tariff on the US but not on each other, then our situation will be a little better than if we levy on everybody. If everybody levies tariff on everybody, then there'll be a deeper recession and a long-term recession. So the mutual trust between nations has been damaged by what the USA has done. And if we want the USA to reverse this tariff war, then what nations will have to do is to levy tariffs on the USA but not on each other. And in this, EU and the BRICS countries will have to play a very big role because they have to come to a negotiated settlement that they will not dump and they will not put tariff on each other, but they will put tariff on the USA. If that happens, then within a few months, the USA will realize that it will have to reverse the tariff on every other country because it will be the biggest sufferer out of it. So the world requires a strategy so that this war that the USA started, the USA itself begins to withdraw that war. So in the renegotiation, we will have to see that the disadvantage of the unorganized sector, of the workers and the farmers, that is reduced so that the the disadvantage of globalization, and if we do random deglobalization, then the workers and the farmers will suffer, and that we should try to see does not happen. The problem also will be raised further by the rapid increase in the AI. The AI is going to lead to a lot of displacement of labor. We have to try and see that that does not happen simultaneously with this trade war that is taking place. And at the moment, China has an advantage that it can take leadership role in the world in terms of trade. What was the advantage of the USA? That the China has to play a very responsible role, and then it can give lead in terms of having a more democratic trade in the world.
Yes.
So to conclude, uh, President Trump has a goal of making America great, but there is no path. The path that he has chosen is not the path by which it can happen. Similarly, there is a crisis of capitalism because of which there are good jobs in the USA have become fewer. This is not the way to create good jobs because they will require permanent tariffs, which will mean permanent problem in the USA. President Trump also wants to bring down China's rising aspirations. He wants to prevent China from rising further. But by actually attacking his own allies, that's not the right way to do it. So, in every way, if you look at it, what he's doing through tariffs, that is not the solution to the problems of America. The problems of America were coming from the problems of capitalism, the crisis of capitalism. So, rather than sorting out the crisis of capitalism, he's aggravating the crisis of capitalism. And for India also, we should not think of going alone with the USA because if the USA is in recession, our economy will be further affected. We should actually get together with the other nations and form a bloc to prevent America from gaining advantage. So our strategy should not be that we have lower tariff than Vietnam, we have lower tariff than other countries, so we can get an advantage. That will not get an advantage. The only advantage will be when we prevent America from levying these tariffs all over the world. So therefore, we must also get together with the other countries rather than be isolated and only negotiating with the US. Thank you for your patience.
Sir, there is a question.
Yes.
Our Prime Minister also campaigned for Trump and he also desired the Trump to be elected as the President of America. In such a situation, is there really a possibility to de-link Indian policies, Indian government's policies with American government policies, rather delinking Trump himself with Modi or Modi with Trump? So if that is not going to happen, what would be the consequences to the Indian economy?
So Trump is a very transactional man. He only looks for interest of the USA, and friendships don't matter. Even closer allies like Canada, there is no ally closer than Canada. He has put many heavy tariffs on Canada, and he is disrupting the trade with Canada. And yesterday, when Mr. Carney has won the election, he has said that Canada has been stabbed in the back. So for Mr. Trump, there is no friend. It's only the self-interest that is there, and it is in the self-interest of India to de-link India also from the USA and link India with the rest of the world, with BRICS and with EU, etc., and fight for our right. Because our agriculture cannot be opened up. Our agriculture, we have farmers who are half acre, 1 acre, 2 acre. In America, the minimum farm is 250 acre. So our farmer cannot compete with their farmer. And Trump is wanting Indian farming to be opened up. He wants chicken legs, and he wants corn, and he wants the pistachios, and he wants apples, etc., coming from the USA. So Indian farmers cannot compete, and therefore we do need protection from American market. But Trump wants our market to be opened up. So that will be disastrous because in the USA only less than 1% of the population depends on farming, whereas in India 60% depend on farming and 46% of workers are in the farming sector. So we cannot give in the terms that the US president wants. So therefore we have to de-link and link up with the rest of the world. And Mr. Trump is not a who will give concession.
The second question is about China. The second question is about China. What are the possibilities and potential possibilities for China to be leading, to attain the leadership role, not only in Southeast Asia and East Asia, including
Europe.
propping up some countries in Europe. To what extent is it possible?
So China realizes that it has surpluses which it needs to sell somewhere else. And the other countries also, because of tariff in the USA, will have surpluses which they would want to sell elsewhere. So therefore, a greater amount of trade can take place between the non-US countries, that is BRICS, EU, Southeast Asia, and so on. This has to be negotiated. It should not lead to dumping. It should not be that China starts dumping somewhere and EU starts dumping somewhere, etc. Because then all nations will put tariff on each other, and if that happens, then there'll be a deep recession. So this is a time for negotiations, and already that's why I think the Chinese realize that they need to negotiate to sell the surpluses rather than do dumping, because that would be very dangerous. So I think the stage is right, because if we do dumping on each other, then the world economy will go into a deep recession. If we negotiate, then we can prevent USA from levying tariff and make it reverse its policy. So it'll be more rational for the rest of the world to negotiate with each other and to force America to withdraw rather than start dumping on each other and to levy tariff on each other. So I think it's an opportunity. Now, how far the opportunity will be taken, we will see in the coming days. Already President Xi has been traveling to Southeast Asian countries. He's been to Vietnam, to Malaysia. He's already sent message to India for better negotiations with India on our trade, because we have a huge deficit with the Chinese. So we have a surplus with the US, but we have a deficit with the Chinese. So we can try and negotiate a better deal with the Chinese also. So EU, China, BRICS, Southeast Asia, if they negotiate, I think that's the way to go.